Hey, it's the Chief bonding with board games, and I haven't done a Chiefs vlog in a while, so I figured I would come on and do said vlog. So first of all, we'll go over a few things a couple times just because people will kind of trickle in over time. I do plan to do a live Maze Rats tomorrow, so that would be Sunday. That'll be earlier in the morning. And for those that don't know what I'm doing with Maze Rats, so it's this little pamphlet from Ben Milton. And I started doing just online folks joining in and walking through an impromptu adventure, open world sandbox kind of role playing. And viewers get to interact. So if you can sit and just watch, no need to interact. Magnus is in, boom. But other folks, Never Fear 1911 created a character, so he's moving that character around and doing things. We've been running into different folks. We recently ran into a retired, injured colonel. Skull likes how I say colonel, and he came to life. The folks watching and coming in and watching later, because the lives end up posting just like this one will, got to see how a character just can insert themselves like into the story, and it's awesome. So boom, Hemming, that's right, Hemming, Colonel Hemming, very good. I'd actually forgotten from the Hemingway that he's got some issues, and I believe we're going to learn more about him. So we won't shoehorn him in. But one thing I noticed, Skull noticed, Ref, who was in there, Magnus may or may not have been in there at that time, is that he definitely, Colonel Hemming definitely came to life. And when a character comes to life and ends up being part of that story, not that I'll shoehorn it in, but I sure think that he'll probably be motivated to join the group. So we've learned a few things, but not everything, because of course he's going to hold some stuff close to the vest. But that is Maze Rats. Again, here's my organizational method: live Maze Rats. If you're going to be doing multiple role-playing games, it definitely helps. I've got an in-person one I do that uses Maze Rats. I've got that one. I've got some other ones when I do with my son. So you've got to maintain your organization. The other thing we will talk about, I filmed a little unboxing of Star Trek Adventures Captain's Log, a nice little book. I do comment that it showed up. See if you can see this. I've tried to fix it, but it showed up like bent. But that's all right. Things happen. Nothing in shipping is perfect, and I plan on using it, not just looking at it and keeping it pristine. But we'll be talking about Star Trek Adventures because I've started reading it. Skull says at least a possible source of useful intel. Yes, at the very least. I mean, who knows? Colonel could go off the rails or work against us, or he could end up joining the team. We don't know. We will see where he and the dice lead us. I'm also just came out yesterday. I got a review in of Whale Riders, Reiner Knizia's game from Grail Games. And this is an interesting game. It actually came out last year. And Grail Games, I keep pointing to the wrong side, Grail Games got in trouble with Reiner Knizia because they apparently sold their games into a market where they weren't allowed to sell. I think it was Germany. And there's a German company that had exclusive or has exclusive rights to Germany. Now, I don't know all the ins and outs, so I won't go into the details, but Mr. Knizia revoked Grail Games's licensure with him. And they were using Vincent Dutrait, who does beautiful art. Now, I will tell you, I don't necessarily like this theme that, I don't know, an Eskimo type, I know that's not the right word, the indigenous northern peoples rode whales. But I would imagine they came up with this because they wanted some fictional group of people. They didn't want to be tied into like actual true life stories, so they created this. But well, that's not helpful. Hold on. But this gameplay up here with fulfilling contracts and working your way down the coast is awesome. Go watch my full review for that. And I open up telling you right away, you might get mad at me because this game cost, I don't know, a miniature market was like $22 when it came out. And now it's like 150 because this will probably never get made again. Now, here's what I do know. Reiner Knizia is my favorite designer. My favorite game of all time, whether it's role-playing, board games, war games, whatever, is Medici, a Euro trading game in the Renaissance. I love this game. And what happens is good games from Reiner Knizia get remade. I'm sure there's a licensing time that this company has, or maybe that's void now, who knows. But the mechanics in this game are so good, it will be remade. I'm calling it. I have no inside information, but it'll be remade. Hey, never fear. Good to see you in, brother. Good to see you in. Let's see what else is fun. Skull was talking about Maze Rats Live is fun. It is fun. And again, if anybody sees this and just wants to lurk and watch, you can do that. You don't have to interact. Ref will come in. Some folks will roll dice and some will come up with names for places or things we run into. It's very nice because it's like I'm running a mostly GM solo mode, kind of. Never fears running a character, but you can't run it all. And when you're doing live, you've got to keep things rolling if you've got any hope of entertaining anybody. And although I involve folks, sometimes I just have to make decisions and keep her moving. And honestly, I think that might be some of the fun to watch and see how things unfold or how games might work for those that aren't into role playing. They might realize, oh, this is kind of interesting. What is this here? You like the game more than B-17? I do. I've played more B-17, although I've probably got 100 games of Medici in, but I probably got 1,000 of B-17. B-17 is great. First game I ever purchased, like hardcore hobby game, B-17 Queen of the Skies, 1983. I was 13. But Medici with the Euro games or with games, I just love it with a group. And it handles 3, 4, 5, and 6 really, really well. How can we like a game more than B-17? I love B-17, and I think I could tell even then I was into the role-playing side of things because B-17 leads toward that theater of the mind. And I empathized even with the plane. So it did. B-17 does wonderful things. Skull, I've got to be more mindful of the timeline tech level when riffing. Got it. Okay. I thought you were directing. I thought you were thinking I need to, but you're saying you need to. Yeah, kind of. I mean, and it's not like we. So let's say you're in fantasy medieval. You can have little quirks. They would need to be consistent quirks, or is it steampunkish? Are there firearms? Different stuff like that probably is where it can. Okay, yeah, you got it. All right, well, that's interesting. You're getting your hands on The Walking Dead in October. Yes, it's pre-ordered, and my co-host on the Whiskey Show. By the way, today I will be sipping some Japanese pure malt. I can't say that. Shibui? I don't know. 10-year. Pure malt means it's a blend, but it's very good. It's got a very nice honeyed flavor. But my co-host loves zombies. And we played tons of Zombicide, the board game. He purchased that, played it with his kids. But when I got The Walking Dead from Free League, Kickstarter, pre-ordered, I asked, would you be interested in coming on the show? We'll film it. It won't be live. And he said, absolutely. So that'll be fun. That will be coming soon. So let's see. And then One Piece. Hello, the main thing. If you guys haven't seen the Netflix live action adaptation of One Piece, check it out. The manga shirt. Hello. Now, I've never really got into manga. I started the history of these shirts was because my co-host, we were looking for just interesting shirts at a Goodwill, which is like a used clothing store. And he held up one of the manga shirts, these silk, printed shirts, and said, I bet you wouldn't wear that on the show. And I said, I bet I would. Or maybe I found it, I can't remember, and said, that looks like visual whimsy. And I loved them. But I hadn't gotten into all the different manga shows. Now, my son has watched One Piece, the anime version. But I was hearing good things, and I went and watched One Piece, the live action, and the storytelling, the writing, the acting is so very good. The film work, I mean, it's just great. And right away, I watched 3 1-hour episodes. I was like, wow. And the development of each character, it is one, you can feel that Japanese feeling coming through. You know, this didn't come out of Hollywood pure. And that I forget his name, but the writer of the anime show had the rights to final like corrections and authorizations, and he made them reshoot some things to stay true to the vision. Now it's live action, so it's got to be cut down and encapsulated. But boy, did he do a good job. Some people are even coming out as haters on it, but it's just you can look at it as another way of telling a story, but they really develop each one of the characters. So we'll talk a little bit about One Piece some more as people come in. Let's see what else we got here. We'll play Dragonbane soon here, maybe Monday. Very cool. I've been looking at that, and I don't know that one. I've kind of got so many that I'm working through, especially from Free League, that I wasn't going to pick that one up. Dragonbane. They were going to send me, oh shoot, Verson. Am I saying that right? Probably not. But I love the idea of it's that like northern fairy tale world that you're moving through. I like weird role playing stuff. I like usually historically I didn't even play much fantasy, period. I was usually into apocalyptic. As a kid, I was into apocalyptic. Red Dawn, Twilight 2000, stuff like that. Not the fantasy, although I played a little bit. I'm enjoying fantasy now. Apocalyptic is probably still my go-to. What I love about fantasy is how unique and different each of the characters of the worlds can be. I do like the Blade Runner Noir. I'd love to see some supplements come out for Dragonbane. The box set is great, but it's lean. It's lean. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's see what else is going on. Better watch the anime or to read the manga. That's what my son said. My son said, no, I can't watch it. And I get it because like me, I'm an avid book reader. I'm reading all the time. And I will have a great book that I read, Clear and Present Danger. No, not Clear and Present. Patriot Games from Clancy was probably one of my favorite books. And the movie came out and I was excited. Harrison Ford was in it. And they dumbed down the terrorist actions in order to make it an easier entry for the watcher, and it wrecked it for me. It's a good movie in and of itself, but because I'd read the book and the way Clancy set up the terrorist, and then the movie goes for, they're brothers, so it's this brother revenge thing. The bad guy was so much deeper and narcissistic in the book, but that's what my son had with One Piece. He didn't want to watch it because he says, Zorro, there were 60 episodes that set up Zorro, or maybe it wasn't Zorro. It might have been the other fellow that's on the island shipwrecked. Yes, I can't say that. Kioro Oda is the creator of manga. Yes, and he retained his creative license. So when they were done, as my understanding, he watched it and made him reshoot several things. And who knows what he had him do, but it is awesome. And the feel of something new and different comes through. This thing's going to continue to burn and gain because the storytelling is so very, very good. And I heard they're already filming the second season. Yes, Vaesen. How do I say that? Vaesen? Or is it Vaesen? Magnus, if you can put that in like phonetic English, I think it's Vaesen. But who knows? I mispronounce everything. Same artist in Vaesen as Dragonbane, very evocative and really fires up the imagination. Let's see. He picked the Luffy actor personally. Wow, he did a good job. I mean, even the character can cross his eyes a little bit, and then the zoom ins will be a little bit closer than what you're used to, or the angle is odd, and it going and looking at some of the anime or the manga, it's those angles. My goodness, it's good. It is just so refreshing to, one, have a great story. Two, the fact that you can tell it's odd or weird from an American point of view. In other words, it's coming from a different culture. And I don't mean that culture's odd or weird, just that it's different from my mental perspectives. But then the culture inside the anime or the manga and how that is different yet comes to life. It's kind of like the animated Spider-Man series, the multiverse stuff. When that first came out, it was so visually comic bookish glory on the big screen that it looked great. I was like, wow, these artists did a very good job of bringing a comic book to life in the movie. So, is it creatures? Is it creatures? If you're talking about One Piece, no. Well, there's creatures in there though. Oh, Vason is creatures. Got it. Okay. Vason. And I'm saying it correct? Like Vason? That's how I would say it. Shoot, this thing keeps coming on. Can you guys hear this fan blowing in the background? Okay, it's pronounced Vason. Got it. And if you guys can hear, my mic might be canceling that fan that just kicked on. I've got a dehumidifier, and it hasn't been turning on at all, and I forget to make sure it's off. If you guys can hear that, I will go kill it. My mic may be saving the day here. It was audible. Okay. I'm going to kill it then. Oh, okay. No fan noise. You're good. The mic must be handling it. Good deal. It's distracting to me. But if you guys are good, I'm good. All right. So let me circle back. Let me read a few more. Can't put the exact pronunciation here. Got it. Okay. I didn't, but all right. So we're going to circle back. Whale Riders. Okay, Vason, but I'm close. Got it. Whale Riders is a phenomenal game. It is hard to get right now because it's out of print. Grail Games made an error. Let me turn this off. And somehow, I don't have all the particulars, violated a contractual agreement with Reiner Knizia. I've read some gist, but I won't go into it. Basically, they were told they couldn't. I think they had to sell out what they had produced, and then they were done. They'd lost the contract. And I did not get this game originally when it was kickstarted, even though I love Vincent Dutrait artwork and Reiner Knizia's game style and play. But the theme of people riding whales just seemed ridiculously ridiculous. I can't say ridiculous. Ridiculously stupid. Kind of like me saying the word. It seemed dumb because that whale's going to submerge. And why would you have a bit in its mouth? I don't think that would work at all. But I'm sure they wanted to keep it fictional so it wasn't impinging on any kind of real society. That's what I think was going on. Regardless of all that, the gameplay is phenomenal. This game takes about 45 minutes to play. It takes about 5 minutes to teach. It handles two players really, really well, and it feels strategic. You have to really watch what your opponent's doing, and you've got to counter their moves and subtly try to drive the play. Very nice. Still takes 45 minutes. I played with 5s, 6. Did I play with 4? I think I played with 4, but 6, I've played a bunch, and it is awesome at 6. It's still just as fast. It is way more chaotic rather than strategic because you'll get into a port where you will be planning to buy goods in order to then match them to contracts that you will then get points for and money. But it's so chaotic because everybody can flood into your port and the things you were going to buy are gone by the time your turn comes around. But that being said, it's a great group game because in this, there's multiple ports and there's these storm tiles. Once you buy something, you replenish the goods that are in these different ports. And there are storm tiles. See if they show one. They do not. And if you draw a storm tile, they basically clog up the market. And the market starts where the very first item in the market if you purchase is 0 and then 1, 2, 3. So if you get multiple storms in there, you can completely lock out a port. You can't even buy anything, or it eventually is so expensive that you don't want to stay there, and it becomes a place you just move on by. What's very cool, though, you can kind of bolt ahead and get deals if you can get far enough ahead, or you could linger back. And if that storm tiles, which are randomly drawn, they're mixed in with all the other tiles, if it doesn't end up clogging a port, somebody can just sit there and kind of farm it. And the whole crowd will start chanting, storm, 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 storm. And you get that group feel because they're not liking what this person is doing because you can't get back to them. In this game, as you move down the coast, you can only go one way until you get to the terminus. You can stay there at any port and buy stuff. But then when you start to come back up the coast, again, you can only go one way. And then when you get all the way back up to the Sun Port, which is the very place where you started, I don't think you can't quite see the Sun Port, you then buy pearls. And in the game, the person who has the most pearls at the end of the game wins. You get pearls from that last Sunport market. There's some random pearls mixed in with the goods. And the contracts, as you achieve them, also have pearls. So it is a super, super board game. Handles crowds and 2 people perfectly. Hard to do, easy to teach. My belief is, and if you watch the review, you'll see me go into more details and show how specific gameplay works. But you will also see that I think this will be reprinted. I doubt they'll use the same theme, but who knows? But it's such good gameplay. I think it'll be rethemed, turned into something else. Let's see what else is in here. Thought of the setting for the Walking Dead show. Will it be a series, one shot? What about Viking the Twins? Yeah, I've got to film Viking the Twins. I might even do that today. I'm getting stuck between having to do my fall yard work and getting filming going because I want to do Death in Space, a one-off, a one-shot, and Into the Odd with Viking the Twins, one shot. And then in November, I'm going to start season 2 of Twilight 2000. Whenever The Walking Dead shows up, I'll get my buddy over here, we'll film it, and I'll edit it up. We will be in Atlanta. It will be a campaign. I'm ex-military, hence the hat. I actually wore this in one training exercise, although we were in a special thing down in Fort Polk. Otherwise, I wore woodland camo all the time. I was a medic in a light infantry unit. And what we have talked about is we are going to be from some military unit, probably a top tier special ops military unit that just happens to be stationed in and around Atlanta when the zombie plague breaks out. And we're going to try to survive within that urban environment. That's our plan. We're going to try to make the urban environment work for us against the zombies, even though there are millions. There'll be millions of them, 2 against millions. And we'll see what happens. So, but yes, as soon as I was reading it all digitally, I really love having the game, the book in my hands and something physical to touch and reference. And I thought about starting it early with him when I just had the digital docs. And then I thought, nah, I got enough games I'm going on now. There's no need to try to rush it. And my big goal is to enjoy the process. And I really enjoy the books, having them physically present, thumbing through them, making sure I grok everything. Speaking of grokking and making sure enjoyment, I will talk about some things that I'm only a very little bit into this book, but there are some weird things right off the bat. And I think it's more of our current culture than anything else, but we shall see. So I've covered Whale Riders. And again, I state right from the beginning of the review, this thing is crazily priced right now. The best thing about that is I think it ensures that there'll be a reprint of it. Let me have some more Japanese whiskey. Smells great. If anybody wants to see a fun show with 2 buddies hanging out, talking whiskey, but the joy is watching the buddies, do check out Scotch Test Dummies. That's my more popular channel, and that's why I have so much whiskey. We buy some and we get it sent to us. So I had a buddy come over and say, what are you, some kind of alcoholic? Real negative. I'm like, dude, that's a wall of whiskey over there. And I've got a wall of board games over there. I cannot play all those games and I cannot drink all that whiskey. I just sip a little bit now and then. Just like I try to play as much as I can, but I don't stress over it. So I just play when I can. And reading and learning and creating and even doing the show with the games or the whiskey is part of the enjoyment. So if that makes sense. All right, we've talked One Piece. We may come back a little bit, or I'll take your questions. We've talked Whale Riders. And so Star Trek Adventures Captain's Log is designed, as it says, as a solo role-playing game. So Iron Sworn, I believe, started this idea where they were like, wow, we can do that. We can do that same thing. I have Starforged. I like the space idea with Iron Forge, so I picked it up. And I picked this up because I always loved Star Trek. You know what? As a kid, born in 1970, and everything in syndication in the 80s, I would come home from school and you could binge watch Star Trek because it would be on sometimes. At the very least, it was 2 episodes in a row, I think, if I remember right. But it was Monday through Friday. So you would rip through entire seasons very quickly. And just was so enjoyable as a kid. And let's be honest, you didn't have a lot of stuff to do. So I'd play a little Atari. I would watch some whatever, Leave It to Beaver or Star Trek, whatever the cycle was going on at the time. That's where I learned to love I Love Lucy and Barney Miller, and to really see those great comedies or sitcoms that were coming out in the heyday, but also Star Trek, even Bonanza. So, and then you would go outside and play. So let's see, where were we at? There's an actual manual for a zombie apocalypse situation issued by the U.S. government. Huh, that's funny. I didn't know that, but interesting. Skull, I'll be playing Battletech later with a very good old friend. Sorry, I have a grandson named Avery, so I started to read it that way. Will be some scotch, excellent, or bourbon, also very good. A shot in the honor of Pee Wee Herman to start the night. Very cool. Very, very cool. Flipper. I never watched that much Flipper. Maybe they didn't have that on syndication where I was at as a kid. They even had a little bit of Honeymooners, although I didn't get into that as much. Bob Newhart, the old Bob Newhart was there. Even Mary Tyler Moore was good. Dick Van Dyke I loved. The idea where they showed the writing room and how they came up with concepts and then all the stuff back at the house. I thought, just great. Even Mary Tyler Moore was in on the rerun cycle. Mayberry RFD. I clicked on it. There we go. Honeymooners was great. Mayberry RFD. Yeah. Annie Griffith's show. That was where I saw all those great shows. It's a good time. Good time. So back on Star Trek Adventures. One thing that was odd in here. Now, they've got a comment that if you don't know Star Trek, and I know that's possible. I know it's possible. But I'm thinking, if you're buying this, the idea that you would come to it with no knowledge at all seems odd to me. And I know there's probably folks that are like, well, you've got to state the obvious. Let me see if I can find it here. This chapter is oriented toward fans new to the Star Trek or those who want more information about the Star Trek setting. And I understand this could be very young folks that are actually just seeing Picard now or whatever, and they don't know the history. So I get it. I think that's part of it. But then they go in to explain that they cover a little bit the infinite diversity and infinite combinations from the Vulcans, But they spend a lot of time talking about how there's no racism, there's just acceptance for everybody. It's just kind of beating it over the head, because I'm thinking, yeah, but you got the Klingons, which then represent, like, let's be honest, the Klingons are representing this warlike humanity and all the conflict that can be there. And you've got Ferengis, which are, in my opinion, representing greed. And it's kind of that American greed that it's got to be capitalism and profit. And that's kind of what's going on there. And you've even got in Deep Space Nine, the Cardassians enslaving and everything that goes on with the Maquis and the resistance and all of that that's there. So there's this idea. I mean, it talks about, they get into like everybody is accepted. And I'm thinking all the conflict comes though. Like I would love to play a campaign where we're all Klingons and we're just going out battling. Okay. Now I would love to be in the Star Trek realm as well, but in the original Star Trek, I loved the red shirts. And I knew they were going to die. I think it was because ever since I was 5, I wanted to be a police officer. So I thought, well, they're kind of like the police, and they go do the risky things and die. So, but I was like, yeah, I don't care. I like what they're doing. And, but the idea that, I know what they're trying to do here. They're saying everybody be kind and open and accepting while you're playing the game. But then they do talk that if you want to play a bunch of Kardashians that are out raiding, that is, of course, allowed. Well, of course it's allowed. You can do whatever you want with your game. But that wouldn't be fully in the spirit of the Federation. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know. I'm just barely. I mean, I'm into the deal where they're spending a whole chapter explaining to you what Star Trek is, and I'm like, I know what Star Trek is. So I've just had to put on my idea that they're informing younger generations that maybe don't. But the younger generations, I know if they like it, they've binged every old episode. They know more than me. They quote stuff. I'm like, which episode's that? 32. What? How do you know the name of the episode? Let's see what else was on. Magnum PI, one of my favorite shows. Yep, loved Magnum. I lived up in the mountains of Colorado, a little town called Evergreen. We could not get CBS at my house. So I couldn't see Magnum PI live as it came out, nor could I see Airwolf. And I really wanted to see Airwolf. So I had to deal with watching it in a rerun. So they're going to define Star Trek. Yes, that's what they do. Like I said, I don't want to just read it, but let me see. The hopeful outlook is most evident when Star Trek is examining very real modern social issues, such as racism, sexism, political unrest, or complex aspects of individual identity, including faith, disability, sexuality, and many others. Star Trek invariably promotes a future where everyone can live the life they want, unfettered by the 21st century challenges of bigotry, hate, and selfishness. I thought that was odd that that's in there. The vast majority of characters in Star Trek setting, especially those from the Federation, embrace this view and fold it into everything they do. The choices they make, the direction they choose to pursue. Your character most likely shares this view. See, I like the most likely. What do they see when they look to the stars? And again, they tell you this is for folks that don't know it, but I'm like, I don't know. It just seemed like a modern sensibility plugged into the show where, yes, it's the future and they're fighting against all those things. It's like they've passed all of that stuff. But again, that's why, in my opinion, again, they work in the Klingons. Or you can look at the Vulcans. The Vulcans were great. They're this super logical society, but they train themselves to be logical. They're not born that way. You learn from watching the show, they were a very violent. I mean, look, the Romulans broke off from them, but they were so violent that they had to train themselves into a system of logic, which is very interesting. And then anybody that knows, Spock's actually half human, half Vulcan, and the Vulcans overall didn't like him because of that. There was a racism toward him from the Vulcans. So he had to deal with not being accepted by either humans or Vulcans. But how his father overcome, I mean, the depth of the stories were great. As a kid, you got the swashbuckling and the womanizing of Kirk, but then you got these deeper stories. But it's not like the Vulcan society is perfect. They're kind of flawed because of their striving for logical perfection, which is great. I like Star Trek. I love Star Trek. Me too. Ernie Borgnine in a gunship. Yes. Not a sci-fi fan. Yeah, that happens. Modern cultural, moral legalese. Yes, it turned me off a little bit. Again, they've got the disclaimers. Hey, if you know the setting, the show is always already about trying to do the right thing in a tough situation. Yes, and I know part of what the show is when it was being filmed, there was all the racial issues. So they made sure that the crew had Uhura, who was black. There's a Russian because we were, in the midst of the Cold War. So they did all this cool stuff. And I think that is great, showing the future by showing what your crew looks like. Japanese, were there. And we just had this, war with Japan. So companies just stick to making games instead of this moral posturing. Yes, that's one thing, again, where I love Free League. It was very interesting Free League gets me back into role playing when they come out with Twilight 2000, the 4th edition. I'd played Twilight 2000 1st edition in the 80s. So I picked up Free League's Twilight 2000, read the rules, loved it, started buying all their stuff until I got Starforged. And when I was reading Starforged, it was the first time I was exposed to the safety tools for role playing. I'm like, what is this nonsense? I thought it's fake. I mean, I run a lot of games, even at my house, and the rules of decorum follow. Like if I had somebody come over, I've got a husband and wife team that are in their 20s, a husband and wife team, a group, they come over and his wife is more into role playing than he is, but he likes it, but they're very religious. Great. I've got somebody else who's more into hunting and he's got a high paying job, but he loves the fantasy element. He's always like a ranger. So he takes his hunting world into that. Well, he'll curse a little more. And he leans further to the right. Well, when we're at the table though, I'm like, hey, remember, we're playing these characters in the game. So this isn't you coming out. And they're all like, well, yeah, obviously. Now, with that being said as well, my son's playing and he's 16. So I set the tone of like, hey, this is like a PG-13 movie. So we're not going to get into anything that would be over or above a PG-13 movie, except maybe in the blood or the gore, maybe. But it's not like we spend a lot of time in that. It's not like Chainsaw Massacre. But that's it. Now, if somebody came in and started to describe a XXX fantasy action in the middle of the room with this group, I would stop them because I'd go, whoa, not appropriate. My kid's here. He's only 16. We've got this young couple over here and that go to church. I don't need you describing some in detail sexual acts, but I can't imagine that even happening with me at the table. I think even if someone had the idea that hey, you know what, I'm going to describe something graphically, I think they would look at me and the beard and go, maybe not. Because they would know they were just trying to poke the bear. That's just my opinion. But I've never had that problem. But I don't do, when I invite groups over to play role-playing games in person at my house, it's not like I'm inviting strangers off the street that I met at a pub. So, I mean, I kind of know them. I tell them, hey, this is what we're doing. I heard you were kind of interested in this, and I know them already. So maybe that's why. Let's see where we were. What is this here? That's only the game. Large number of products are like that. This isn't only this game. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's been like a current push. I'll talk a little more about it. That's due to Sean Tompkins, not free leagues, but they allowed stuff like that. So part of it is on them as well. Probably, sure. And I don't even have a problem if it's in there. They can put whatever they want in their book. That's not the norm, thankfully. Never came close to that in my game experience. Exactly. Me neither. Most of everybody are good folks. I agree 100%. You know, when I was a kid, there was a little bit more of the murder hobo stuff where we just wanted to get in a fight all the time. And it's a lot more nuanced now. And I don't know if I would jump in with a group of strangers at like a con, just because I think sometimes you are getting folks that want to like needle the other players a little bit just to get a reaction. That's been what I've noticed. Or let's be honest, some people aren't socially adept and they don't realize, well, I don't know these people, so I'm going to not drop F-bombs a lot. Okay. So, but the safety tools, I did a 3-part series on safety tools. Actually hasn't been watched that well. The very first one is both military. We did a lot of, I was a medic, so we would do these big, elaborate mass casualty things where the people are putting moulage on their face so that you as a medic have to recognize he's got or she's got that type of injury and then treat it appropriately. Also, by seeing these very realistic fake injuries, it helps prep your brain for when you see the real injury. You're not shocked by what you're seeing, is the idea. In the police, we practice for active shooter by having role players that will be, you know, wounded or whatever. And you sometimes have to go past them to go get the person doing the bad things. And they train you to expect that. That was episode 1. Go check that out. Episode 2 is safety tools I like, but I don't call them safety tools. So I use the movie rating system. I do it after the end of a session. I ask people, what part of this session worked for you? What didn't? And what do you want to do in the next episode? That helps me understand, make sure what I think's working is working, maybe pick up if something didn't work with somebody. And then I want to know what their character's wanting to do the next time we sit down so I can plan ahead. So I have little things on that. And then I have a bunch of safety tools that I think are terrible that I hate. Like if let's just say Magnus doesn't like spiders and we're in a fantasy campaign of maze rats and big spiders come in, Magnus could come in and say, whoop, I want to fast forward past the spiders. I'd be like, nope. But in this deal, he could even touch the X card and say, whoop, no spiders. And I would say, yes, there are. So it's still a game. Being murder hobo isn't a bad thing. Right. I agree. I mean, the only thing I kind of hope for is that someone's playing their character. Never Fear will know this. We had a player in the early Maze Rats who got a little bored and his character started to do things that were a little odd. So I said, well, are you doing this because your character? And he said, no, I'm bored. Well, I'm like, well, that's not going to work. If your character's doing it because of a reason, a past trauma, whatever, fine. If you're role-playing your character, great. But if you're just doing it because you, the player, are bored and you're just trying to fiddle with the gears. But that was interesting. Go watch episode 3. It actually worked in our favor. So it's not like I was upset or anything. Let's not talk about the shenanigans my 13-year-old Hobbit thief got into. I was having fun. Sure, that's allowed. 13-year-old me. Yes. Spiders. There you go, Magnus. Oh, those look like black widows. I can't unsee those. Yes. So that there was a little bit of that in here. Now I'm only in the very first chapter and I almost skipped it, but I thought, I want to do a review of this. I don't know when I'm going to get a chance to play it. I've got a great buddy of mine. For those that have watched my ham tag stuff, Judd Vance is a big Star Trek guy, and I would love to have him live on set playing a character. I think he would be great. I don't know if he'll be willing to do that. Wow, I got a little close to my camera there for a second. But I would love to have him over and maybe do that. But that's way, way, way in the future. Way in the future. I've got to get that going with The Walking Dead and my partner first. Scott Bruno. What else we got there? Ruled it fairly as you could in that situation. You didn't stop from doing stuff even then. Right. Yeah, I didn't stop it. And it was kind of fun. We had to adjust to it. And that's where our goat, who was bait, Glad, ended up saving the day. And Never Fear's character, Finn the Peddler, had a heroic critical kill on the bear snake. Go watch episode 3 of Maze Rats if you want to see us deal with something that was kind of chaotic, but worked great for the scene. And so even in that situation, it worked. And we had to deal with it, which is kind of like real life anyway. I mean, someone's always throwing a wrench into your plans. Star Trek was so much about puzzle solving, you could almost drop the combat chapter. Yeah. Or I love the discovery side, though. Hitting the planet. For me, that's, God, I don't know. As I was reading through, kind of skimming it, I love the idea of the ship is my haven. It's my home base. And I'm going to travel to interesting places and have these interesting sandbox adventures is kind of where I was going. Yeah, the Gorn enters the chat. More spiders. No. Yeah, it has in there in one of the safety tools on the it's pause, rewind, or it's the card, the X card where you can just stop stuff. You can say like somebody brings up dentistry, you could stop it and say skip, fast forward ahead. I was like, dentists? Snakes, spiders, they included clowns. I was like, never fear. If we're playing Maze Rats and you suddenly told me, hey, just so you know, Chief, I personally don't like clowns. So I don't think Finn the Peddler would run into any clowns. I'd be like, next scene, you run into a room of clowns and they're evil clowns and they make their red makeup from their victim's blood. And you'd be like, I'd be like, yeah, am I freaking you out? You'd go, yeah. And I'd go, that's the goal, baby. You say no clowns, there's more clowns. I got the same rule with my guys at work. They'll come in and go, hey, I didn't like that assignment you gave me. Don't give that to me again. I'm like, you are now my expert in that. And they'll go, what? And I'll be like, yeah, you're the expert. Let's see what we got here. John Peterson, great historian, sums up RPGs as exploration, combat, logistics, resupply. Love it. Yeah, my in-person group, they're working their way through a hex crawl, a West Marches. And I told them you're in kind of a land of plenty now. So you don't have to worry about all of your rations. There's enough water currently. But if you end up in a water world-ish area or a desert, you're going to have to start really watching your rations. Now, when they did a dungeon delve, they did have to watch their light. Now, because I told them that, they'd picked up some oil lanterns. And I was hoping they would get broke in combat. But they had these oil lanterns that lasted very long versus just torches. But they made that consciously to put that in backpacks. They had 2 of them even. And I love that because I do want them having to think about problems. But right now, it's the brand new group. I think we met 5-6 times. And I wanted them to not have to worry about watching every canteen of water, every morsel of food. But I told them, you're very likely to run into a desert or a water world type environment. And when that happens, if you venture into that area, you will have to watch your supplies very closely. So that way I put the agency on them. Evil clowns, oxymoron. We've got some nice clowns. I've seen nice clowns. Yes, Mean, brutal clowns. That red makeup is blood. They dye their hair in the blood of their victims. How far are we? Yeah, we're at 50 minutes. I knew we had to be getting close. Anytime I'm getting into the mean, nasty clowns. But yeah, I just thought, I don't know. And then it tells, well, it's got to be a safe place. I'm like, my house, my table is the safest place you could hang out. Nothing's going to happen here in the real world. But I am going to put your fictional characters through the ringer, baby. And they're going to have to make tough decisions. And in my house, your characters, they can die. And you'll make a new one. But you should make good decisions. And then hopefully you'll get lucky rolls, or you've made such good decisions that you don't have to roll at all, or you're going to get positive modifiers. But there's still a chance bad stuff can happen. And that's what makes the game, for me and what I've seen in my players, extremely fun. For a horror setting, clowns could work, absolutely. But never fear, if you tell me you got a clown fear, you may run into, there might be a sect of clowns, the Brotherhood of Monkish Clowns. That's the adjacent area to Fiona. That's a Maze Rat's nod. All right. We'll take any questions that come in, and then I'm going to close this out. I'll try not to go over an hour. One Piece is awesome. If you have not watched One Piece, get on Netflix, go watch it. One Piece is great. Skull, I only ever want to get into a fight. I only ever want to get into a fight in a game. That's a good rule. Good rule as well. I will tell you, I was shot at once. I couldn't even tell where I was getting shot at from. It was over and I did not get hit, but there was nothing even to shoot back at. But not fun, not pleasant. So, yeah. There's a reason we're in role-playing games, and it's for that adventure and that fun. But some people get scared, I guess, by fake things. In game, we will be faster and tougher and braver than me. Yes. I'm 53. I've gotten a little out of shape. There's things like I was with some youngsters, and it was a dangerous situation. We had to do a little bit of sprinting and moving, and I was winded. And one of the young fellas says, "Sarge, you okay? I'm about to have a heart attack." Okay. And they said, "Really?" "No." God dang it. I was joking, but I am winded and out of shape. And then they looked at me like, "Is he a liability?" I'm like, "I'm not a liability." It was just in his eyes. He didn't say it out loud. What is the time tech level of the Maze Rats game? Fantasy medieval. Limited, maybe muskets, maybe, but it would be rare guns. Cannons would be more likely, but yeah, so limited, mostly just swords and sorcery. Sorcery is way more effective than gunpowder. Let's see, I want to fight stuff, but I also want to discover my character stories as well. 100%. 100% never fear. I'm big into the discovery aspect. I'm less into, I'm the kind of role player that I don't like the realistic combat. Let's pull out the minis. Let's measure the distance. 1 inch is 10 feet. What's the range? What's my cover? I don't want to do all that. I want to do like theater of the mind. I want you thinking, and I want extreme range, middle range, short range, melee. So that's kind of where we're at. And then how you would move and what you could cover. So it's theater of the mind, but you can still maneuver or use a tree for cover or whatever. But yeah, I don't like the miniatures aspect of role playing. Some do. So I'm not anti that. That's just not the system I will run. So I love Me, Myself, and Die. Trevor Duvall, he's the one that sparked how I kind of wanted to even film my solo shows. But I get bored with the little move this mini over here, move that, move this. I would rather that be theater of the mind. And I like to describe things and get a feel for it. But I know sometimes we might need some placekeepers. If it's ever necessary, I usually have a pad of Post-it notes. And I could throw that pad down, and that could be Finn, and a bad guy or a monster could be over here. So you could get a feeling for it. Or the Post-it note could become the map to the dungeon that we're delving. And we could make little notes on it. I would prefer that, but keep it theater of the mind, but maybe use Post-it notes as a placekeeper. I've done that before. I like minis and having terrain at the table. That's good. Yeah, that's not as much me, but I totally get that. It's just not quite my style. And I'm a terrible painter. Hate it. I like to combine RPGs and tactical combat, but damn, it really slows down the action. It does for me too. Now, I did pick up, I forget the company, Paizo or something. They've got this giant map that has these squares, and I could lay that down if we ended up having a big set piece battle, or I could draw instead of using Post-it notes to do a delve. And I thought about using that. I could see doing that. I would need some practice, but we'll see. If you're running a show, visual aspect matters a lot. Minis and terrain help with that. They do. And I went and got, never fear, you were asking me, and I'm blanking on the name. I got the VTT, not the dice one, but the other one, thinking I could pull that up and do that as we went. But that was a whole nother learning curve. So I have it. I bought the license, but I haven't used it. If you want to emphasize story, go fast, go light. Right, which is why I use Maze Rats. Maze Rats is real light, quick resolution. If you hit, does it spill over past their armor? If it does, that's the damage to your hit points, and you don't have that many hit points. Love it. I'm going to wrap it up. Anybody got any last-minute questions? And then I'll shut this show down. Foundry, that is it. I have Foundry. I started to play with it, and I realized I could get lost in that labyrinth alone. I think it would be good for the visual, but I would need to be an expert at it. And for me to actually use it, that would be something like Never Fear I could see. So like when I was doing the live play with Ron Nicholson and Dan Pancaldi in Twilight 2000, that worked really good. And let's say I was doing it with you and you were running Foundry and you were kind of handling that and I was running the game. I could see that working. It would have to be somebody that was able to like be an expert in that and be a player, but be running that while I'm running the show and the game, because you can get overwhelmed, or at least I can. So, all right, I'm going to call it right there. I'm calling it. There you go. That is right. Exactly. So again, we talked about Star Trek Captain's Log. We talked about Whale Riders. Boom. Great game. And we talked about One Piece, the live action on Netflix. Go check that out if you haven't. Enjoy this beautiful beginning to fall. I will, sir. I love fall. It's my favorite season. I love when that crisp breeze hits the air. And I'm almost done mowing, which means I have more time for gaming, baby. More time for gaming. We could something like that. I don't have Foundry, but I have other VGDs. Got it. We will talk. Put that way in the distant future, though. Way in the distant future. I am out of here. See you guys later. Thank you, everybody that's tuning in now and in the future.